I recently made a game in 48 hours during the 2022 Global Game Jam. This was my first ever game jam, and I worked with 3 other team members to create our game, Woodland Tomb. So let me take you through our submission. The theme for this year was duality, and so after the announcement, we got together with our team and started planning. We wanted to make a 2D puzzle game set in a forest and graveyard. To incorporate the theme, we wanted to add a day and night mechanic, where during the day, the player can move around, read things, and interact with different objects. But at night, new elements such as ghosts or animals appear that interact with the world. The player must observe patterns at night and read clues to figure out how to set up the environment to accomplish a goal. And so the game jam started on Friday evening and we got to work. We started by creating a simple environment with a tile set we found online and implemented player movements. Next, we added the ability to pick up and drop items. Once the basic mechanics were added, I worked on creating a day and night cycle and added some light sources. Now, we wanted the player to be able to observe the whole environment at night, so I made the camera switch to a global view after it gets dark. In the meantime, my teammates added more assets to the environment while our composer, Nico, added the first background music. Here's a quick sample. With these additions, the game really started to come alive, and so the first day of the game jam ended and we headed to sleep. The next morning, we got together as a team and divided up responsibilities for the day. I continued working on the night mechanics and made it so the player is moved to a camp area at night and isn't able to leave until the daytime. Next, I wanted to implement an inventory system so the player can carry multiple items at once. Now, I had no idea how to do this, so I headed over to YouTube and watched a few tutorials. Once I had a good understanding, I started by creating a scriptable object that stored data for an item in the world. I then created an inventory script that stored a list of items the player currently holds. With the programming logic done, I created the UI that displayed icons for items in the player's inventory, and this is how it turned out. Since we wanted the player to store and interact with many objects, I also created a chest inventory, which basically reused the same inventory script, but was attached to a chest object and had more slots to store items. The chest was also going to contain some starting items for the player, such as a note or magic book that had clues on what the player must do. During this time, I also added an interaction text that appears when the player approaches an item, and a tooltip that appears when the player hovers over an object in the inventory. With the inventory system completed, it was time to implement a crafting system that would allow the player to use items they found in the world to create new objects, such as creating a nest from branches and bugs to attract a bird. Once again, I reused the inventory script but added a field to store and display the resulting item of a crafting recipe, and added the crafting system to the campfire. I then created a scriptable object to represent a crafting recipe and designed a simple UI for the crafting screen. It was time to test it out, so I created a test recipe and this is how it turned out. In the meantime, my teammates added a ghost that haunted the graveyard and created the interaction for it. I won't show the different interactions and puzzle steps in this video in case you guys want to try the game out. They also added a new player character from a free asset we found online, created animations for it, and improved the environment with new assets and items necessary to complete the puzzle. Our composer Nico also added some great sound effects, such as fire crackling sound when the player approaches the campfire. It was a really productive day, and we ended around 2 a.m. to get some sleep. The next morning, we got back to work and added the remaining interactions, crafting recipes, and puzzle steps that were needed to complete the game. My teammates added a jackalope that appears at night and is attracted to mushrooms, while I worked on adding an intro message when the player starts the game and an endgame screen. At this point, we were approaching the deadline for the game jam, so we made some final bug fixes, built the game, and submitted it to the jam site. After the game jam ended, we spent some time to polish the game, added a main menu, and published it on h.io. The link is in the description, as well as the links to my team members' pages, so make sure to check them out. Overall, the game jam was a great experience for me. I learned a lot in the span of 48 hours, and had a lot of fun making the game. If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to let the YouTube algorithm know, and I'll see you next time.